In a quiet neighborhood, a feud spirals out of control, ending in murder. Welcome to New Brighton, Ramsey County, Minnesota. A place where the streets are lined with the promise of the American dream. Its homes filled with the laughter of children, the clink of cutlery from family dinners, the hum of everyday life. Known for its tranquility, this suburban paradise is the kind of place where you'd want to raise your children. A sanctuary away from the hustle and bustle of the city, from the harsh realities of the world. A place where, on an ordinary day, the silence is broken only by the chirping of birds or the laughter of children playing in their yards. But behind this peaceful facade, tensions were simmering, a feud was brewing, and it was about to spiral out of control. Yet on the evening of May the 5th, 2014, the tranquility of Knollwood Drive was shattered by the sound of gunshots. A feud between two households had become a fixture of the charming suburb. In New Brighton, a small suburb nestled in Ramsey County, Minnesota, a battle was brewing. This was not a place known for its conflict, but rather its tranquility and family-friendly atmosphere. Yet beneath this peaceful facade, a feud was simmering, steadily escalating between two neighboring households on Knollwood Drive. What had started as a minor disagreement, a trivial matter, had somehow morphed into a full-blown feud. The specifics of the initial disagreement remained a mystery to many, a secret guarded by the two households at the heart of the dispute. However, the effects were far from hidden. The tension was palpable, a cloud of unease that hung heavy over the idyllic, suburban street. The feud was like a slow-burning fuse, threatening to ignite at any moment. The once friendly exchanges between neighbors had turned into cold stares and terse words. Tranquil afternoons were now punctuated with heated arguments, the bitter resentment echoing through the quiet streets. The discord had become so commonplace that it was considered a part of the neighborhood's daily life, a fixture as steadfast as the charming houses themselves. The residents of New Brighton watched with growing concern as the animosity intensified. The feud, once contained within the boundaries of the two households, had begun to affect the entire community. The neighborhood was teetering on the edge of a precipice, the peace and tranquility it had once known threatening to shatter under the weight of the escalating feud. However, no one could have predicted just how far things would go. No one could have foreseen the devastating outcome that lay ahead. An outcome that would forever mar the peaceful facade of their beloved neighborhood. What had begun as a minor disagreement had spiraled out of control. As the sun set on the evening of May 5, 2014, the fuse, smoldering for so long, was about to ignite, propelling the quiet suburb of New Brighton into a chilling tale of true crime. The source of the feud was surprisingly mundane. Feeding deer. In the quiet suburb of New Brighton, this seemingly innocent act would set the stage for a conflict that would shatter the peace of the community. It all started with one man's love for nature. A resident of Knollwood Drive had taken to feeding the local deer population. Every evening, like clockwork, he would scatter food in his yard, inviting the graceful creatures to feast. This simple act of kindness, he believed, was his way of giving back to nature, of fostering a connection with the wild that surrounded their suburban enclave. However, not everyone viewed this act in the same light. A neighbor, living just across the street, saw this daily ritual as more of a nuisance than a noble deed. He argued that feeding the deer disrupted the natural balance of the area, attracting more deer than the neighborhood could sustain. He also pointed out that the deer were causing damage to gardens and increasing the risk of vehicle accidents. This disagreement over feeding deer became a bone of contention. Conversations became debates, debates turned into arguments, and arguments escalated into full-blown confrontations. The two men, once friendly neighbors, now found themselves at odds, their relationship strained by this seemingly trivial matter. The man who fed the deer remained steadfast, believing his actions were harmless, even beneficial. He argued that the deer were part of their community, deserving of compassion and care. The opposing neighbor, however, was equally resolute, standing firm on his belief that the man was causing more harm than good. Neighbors watched as the tension between the two men grew, their interactions becoming increasingly hostile. The serene suburban streets of New Brighton were now filled with an uncomfortable tension, the feud casting a long shadow over the community. Agreements were proposed, compromises suggested, but to no avail. Neither man was willing to back down, their disagreement over feeding deer morphing into a battle of wills. As the disagreement escalated, so did the tension, and the peaceful neighborhood watched on in apprehension. On the night of May 5th, the tensions would finally boil over. Under a blanket of darkness, the quiet neighborhood of New Brighton was about to bear witness to a tragic event. A feud that had been simmering for years was about to reach its boiling point. The tranquility of the night was shattered by the sound of gunshots, echoing across Knollwood Drive. The day had been as ordinary as any other, the morning sun rising over the suburban houses, children playing in the yards, neighbors going about their daily routines. But as the sun set and the evening shadows grew longer, the atmosphere changed. It was as if the neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting, anticipating. Two households, once friends, now stood at polar ends of a bitter disagreement. What began as a minor dispute had spiraled into an uncontrollable feud, the repercussions of which no one could have predicted. The source of the conflict? A seemingly innocent act of feeding deer. As the clock ticked towards midnight, the tension in the air was palpable. The disagreement that had been brewing for so long was about to erupt in the most tragic of ways. In the confines of their homes, the residents of Knollwood Drive were unaware of the impending tragedy. They were oblivious to the fact that their safe, quiet neighborhood was on the brink of being marred by violence. Then, the unthinkable happened. Gunshots rang out, echoing through the silent night. The sound was a chilling reminder of the feud that had been tearing the community apart. The echoes of the gunfire were followed by an eerie silence, a silence that spoke volumes about the gravity of the situation. In the aftermath, the peaceful facade of New Brighton was shattered. The neighborhood was left in shock, grappling with the reality of what had just happened. A man had lost his life, a community had lost its sense of safety, and a feud had reached its tragic climax. It was a night that would forever stain the peaceful reputation of New Brighton. In the aftermath of the shooting, the neighborhood was left in shock. The tranquility of the family-oriented community of New Brighton was shattered, replaced by a sense of disbelief and sorrow. The echoes of the gunshots reverberated not just through the houses of Knollwood Drive, but through the hearts of its residents, forever etching a dark memory in the otherwise peaceful suburb. The local police were quick to respond, investigating with a determination fueled by the urgency of the situation. The crime scene was meticulously combed through, each piece of evidence painstakingly collected and catalogued. The police worked tirelessly, their efforts illuminating the path towards justice. The community watched, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope as the law took its course. The trial that followed was a spectacle, attracting media attention from far and wide. It was a stark contrast to the quiet, unassuming nature of the New Brighton community. The defendant, the man who had once been just another neighbor, stood in the cold, harsh light of the court, his actions laid bare for all to see. The evidence was undeniable, the testimonies irrefutable. The man who had once fed the deer in his backyard was now on trial for taking a life. As the gavel fell, signaling the end of the trial, the man was found guilty. The sentence was severe, a reflection of the gravity of his actions. The consequences of his actions were not limited to him alone. They rippled through the community, a stark reminder of how a minor disagreement had escalated into a deadly feud. The aftermath was a period of healing for the community of New Brighton. The residents were left to grapple with the reality of what had transpired. The quiet streets of Knollwood Drive bore silent witness to their struggle. The deer, once the innocent catalyst of the feud, continued to visit the yards, their presence a bitter reminder of the tragedy. Yet, in the face of adversity, the community rallied together. They drew strength from each other, their shared grief fostering a sense of unity. They mourned the loss of a neighbor, grappling with the harsh reality of the tragedy. But they also began to heal, their resilience shining through the darkness. The story of New Brighton serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how quickly disagreements can escalate, how easily tranquility can be shattered. It is a testament to the devastating consequences of letting anger and resentment fester, of failing to find peaceful resolutions. It was a feud that spiraled out of control, a feud that ended in tragedy, forever changing the peaceful neighborhood of New Brighton. The echoes of the gunshots may have faded, but their impact remains, a haunting reminder of a feud that went too far. It is a tale that will forever be etched in the collective memory of this community, a grim chapter in the history of New Brighton.